Hello everybody, my name is AI2009 and welcome back to another episode of Project Nuclear Downfall. I will not post a Fallout Friday next Friday because I'm going to Cleveland on Friday. And I will be away from my PlayStation 4. So, yeah, sorry to say that. Let's get into Nuclear Downfall now, with the New California Republic and the Legion fighting. The Caesar's Legion will basically want to expand, and they're looking at the New California Republic and thinking that this will be easy. So they decide to invade the New California Republic, starting the NCR-Legion War with a massive offensive into Southern California to attempt to capture Shady Sands. They also launched an offensive into Nevada to try to cut off Oregon. But the Legion doesn't know that the Americans are heavily aiding the NCR. And this aid causes the NCR to push back the Legion a bit. But the Legion would launch an encirclement of Shady Sands. I'm guessing that here is where Shady Sands is. The New California Republic will be very desperate not to lose their capital city. So they're going to break the offensive and push into Legion territory. The United States decides to also get involved to get New Mexico with an offensive into New Mexico, taking over Santa Fe, and an offensive into Utah, winning. The NCR will also push into Baja California. And Flagstaff would get captured, leading the Legion to fall into Mexico. And they would fracture, with Caesar being assassinated by an American. Actually, they would be assassinated by an NCR veteran ranger. And the Legion would fall into chaos, with them becoming remnants that want revenge. And so the NCR has won the war against Caesar's Legion. Now let's head on over to Iberia, where the Reconquista will happen, with the Portuguese pushing the Caliphate back, and the Spanish liberating Madrid. The Italians will also launch their own Reconquista into Italian land. The Portuguese will liberate Lisbon from Caliphate rule, and Catalonia will get some land in the eastern Spain, and would become the Kingdom of Aragon. Spain would become Castile, as the Iberian forces win the war. Portugal would get Galicia. Not Galicia here, that's occupied by Poland. Galicia in Iberia. The French would land in Algeria. And the Italians would land in Tunisia, creating colonies. The Spanish would land in wrong way. In North Africa, and France would push into Morocco. Egypt would liberate itself with rebellions. And they would become the Mamluk Sultanate, whose flag looks like an Among Us character. I can't escape that goddamn game. So anyway, the Mamluks will push back the Caliphate, and Byzantine people will launch rebellions against the Caliphate rule. Bulgaria and Serbia will also get their existence. The Mamluks will continue to push into the Levant, as they are forced to give up their claims in Turkey, as the Ottomans established themselves in Anatolia, being the first people to establish themselves. They will become insanely powerful later. Iran would liberate themselves under the Safavid rule. The Safavids will continue to push into Afghanistan, and they would launch an attack into Iraq and into the remainder of the Levant. The Ottomans will also expand, and they would come into conflict with the Byzantines, starting the First Ottoman-Byzantine War. The Ottomans would gain great victory against the Byzantines in this war. But the Byzantines would launch a counteroffensive to attempt to take over Ankara. This counteroffensive was successful, but not for long, as the Ottomans land in Greece and Gallipoli. And at this point, the Byzantines decide to surrender. And in the peace negotiations, the Byzantines would lose a lot of their land to the Ottomans, including all of Greece. The Bulgarians, seeing the weakness of the Byzantines, would declare war and would win the war. Italy will also land in Albania and take it over. Now it's time for the fall of Constantinople, where it will happen just like historically, and the Ottomans will get a new flag. The early Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans will also keep expanding into Anatolia. The Safavids will also expand into Kurdistan. And thus, the Ottomans are big. They would take Albania from Italy, and they would invade into Bulgaria. And after the capture of Sofia, Bulgaria would surrender. Serbia would suffer the same fate after a brief war. Oops. Now it's time for the Ottoman invasion of Bosnia. And with the encirclement of Sarajevo, Bosnia would surrender, also becoming a new state in the Ottomans. The Ottomans! The Mamluks will also expand into the Levant after a war with the Safavids. A new federation will become popular and would launch a coup, taking over the nation, and thus resulting in the Caliphate's fall. Castile and Aragon would unite to form the Kingdom of Spain. The Ottomans will declare war on the Safavids and would push into Safavid territory. This war will become a huge victory for the Ottomans. And in the peace negotiations, the Safavids will lose some parts of Syria and Iraq. Now it's time for the conquest of Egypt for the Ottomans, where the Ottomans would launch a massive attack into Egypt. With the capture of Alexandria, Egypt would fall, and the Ottomans would become the new caliphate. Boom. The Ottomans are here. They would take over Libya and Tunisia from Italy. And they would also land in Italy. Italy would lose Sardinia and Sicily and the two Sicilies because of this. And the Ottomans would expand greatly. Now it's time for the takeover of Algeria. Of the Ottoman rule. They would subjugate many people. And thus, a lot of nations would form a coalition to fight against them, including France, Italy, the Safavids, and Britain. The coalition forces would start with an invasion of Algeria. The Italians would liberate their land and would land in Tunisia. The British would take over Egypt. The Italians would also push into the Adriatic coast. At this point, Greece would launch a revolution. followed by Croatia. Bosnia would also along with Serbia and Bulgaria. Italian forces would take over Libya as nationalist Turks rise up. The British would take over Iraq and the South Levant. But it's no use. The Greeks would fall back. And the Ottoman Civil War has begun, with the Wasteland Greater Reich aiding the Turkish Empire in this war. Which is a fascist Turkish state. Socialists would also rebel in South Turkey, as the Turkish Empire continues to win battles against the Ottomans. The Turkish Empire would invade the socialists and they would win. They would also land on islands. At this point, the Ottomans would make a counteroffensive. But the Turkish Empire would make a bigger counteroffensive. And the rebels would rise up in Syria. At this point, the Ottomans have surrendered, and in the peace negotiations, Turkey would become a fascist state, and Kurdistan would become their puppet. Yeah. My mind is very deranged sometimes. Romania would become into existence. Along Hungary. The Germans would invade Hungary to secure their loyalty and add a new member to their new Axis. The Hungarian state would join the Axis. Hungary would also invade into Romania and would take over Croatia. The Turks would take over Bulgaria and would create another fascist state, the Legionary Bulgaria. Not Caesar's Legion. And the Romanians would also become fascist after a coup. The SS would launch a rebellion in Germany. But these rebellions are quickly squashed. And the SS gets exiled to Burgundy, where the leader of the SS would plan their crazy ideologies and fanatical and evil fantasies. And they would also join the Axis. So, yeah. YouTube is going to shut down this video. And anyway, let's head over to Russia, where a new Siberian White Army would be established that wants the Tsar back. They would establish themselves in Yakutsk. And they would expand in the Siberian wasteland. These guys would be ghouls that are immune to frost and radiation due to the nuclear winter. Yeah. Thus, Sweden will become fascist and would emerge from their bunkers, exporting valuable iron to Germany. And they would take over Finland and Norway. With the Greater Wasteland Reich claiming the rest of Norway. Oh god, this isn't good. The Turkish Empire would take over Georgia. And yeah. The national Chinese state would expand into China. Thus becoming dominant. The Mughals would also get some land from India. Yeah, so Indonesia would also expand. Into multiple islands, including Sumatra, Borneo, and the rest of Java. Yeah. The Australians would also expand and would take over South Papua New Guinea. The Americans would claim the Philippines. The North Philippines, and the NCR would claim the South Philippines. Indonesia would also start expanding. The Order State of Burgundy would expand into Vietnam. Coming! And then the French would expand into Vietnam. Okay, guys, this is the end of this video. Please like, subscribe, and hit that bell to show notifications. Ideologies 2009 out. Next time, we will see the Fall of the Reich, the Wasteland Become Habitable, and the Calm Before the Storm.